Welcome. In this video, we'll be reviewing a curated list of books, the praised, the criticized, and everything in between. Let's see what readers really think, and help you decide what's worth reading.
Let's move forward with The Dead Cattail Assassins. CC's review attracted 134 likes. Here's what she wrote: a very weak 3-star. Unfortunately, this seems to be when I admit that Peja Jella Clark isn't for me. Tied by Queet. The premise of this book was enticing. An undead assassin, pulled into a bizarre assignment that evoked a memory of her past which shouldn't exist. Mysteries and unlikely paradoxes ensue, and the fast-moving plot is peppered with humorous dialogues and lots of action. It sounds exactly like the type of book that should keep a reader turning the pages, but how come such a theoretically perfect story turned out so boring for me that I really had to push to not DNF? My biggest issue was the characters. I didn't care about any of them, which made the tension and suspense completely a lost cause. Every character felt like an intricately carved out and beautifully dressed puppet that had no life of its own, which is funnily ironic, since the main character here happens to be undead. But I got rather the same feeling from the Dead Djinn universe, so alas, I'm inclined to believe that this is simply Clark's style. It is not to say that the characters are. However, it's obvious how much meticulous attention was paid to every detail, from physical appearance and clothing, to quirks and mannerisms, no matter how minor the character, but being seems very different from being shaped, in this case. They felt too detached, giving us very few glimpses into what they were thinking or feeling, which made their personalities come out shallow and emotions non-existent. As a result, I couldn't connect to any of them, and genuinely didn't care if all of them died, which made the whole action-packed plot lose its charm. The world-building also bothered me a little, which, again, is ironic, because I absolutely love expansive world-building in fantasies, and Clark is good at exactly that. The city and the carnival in the background of the story were painted with striking vividity, much like the feast to the senses that they're supposed to be in the tale. But, once again, beautiful as those descriptions were, I found it hard to feel fascinated enough to care. Unlike Clockwork Cairo, this world felt too mundane. There were parades at the carnival that threw coins at spectators, much like Mardi Gras in New Orleans. There were gondolas ferrying tourists around in the canals, much like Venice. There were partying crowds coating everyone in colored powders, much like Holi in India. None of these felt special enough to evoke a sense of otherworldly wonder for me, and that somewhat defeated the purpose of reading fantasy. I also found it a bit annoying to trod through every little detail of people's clothing, no matter how minor the character, or how commonplace their attire. Someone tugs at their brown breeches tucked into black boots, someone brushes over their white shirt fastened by a gold belt, etc. I get it, it's textural details, but it comes off an awful lot like those chick-lit books that can go on for a whole page about some cashmere sweater. On the contrary, things that could have been more interesting, such as the culture of this world and the magic, were not focused on nearly enough. I did like the ending where certain scenes involving a goddess finally satisfied the escapist in me, but for the vast majority of the book, the detailed world-building was just drowning in mundane specifics, which took away the appeal of all that descriptive writing. I will admit though that Clark's writing is highly polished and evocative in the sensory department, and I see why so many people like it. The plot was also tightly paced and well thought out, but for me, that only made the book lean more into the plot-driven popcorn read territory, while not providing the same entertainment value as an actual popcorn read. Overall, this was less enjoyable than the Dead Djinn universe, and it might be the last book I'll pick up from the same author.
Alright, let's check out The Bright Sword. Here's what Asha said. Her comment got 215 likes. Is to King Arthur what was to Narnia, Harry Potter and was to The Lord of the Rings. It's a thoroughly modern version of a story deeply embedded in the cultural consciousness that actively engages with the twisted implications of that story. Where asked what it would be actually like to go to Hogwarts or Narnia, asks what it takes to make a person want to go to Camelot and if that would fix things. I be to read this book a couple times, but do still think I'm being objective when I give it 5 stars. It's thoughtful and fun and weird and exciting and beautiful and I loved it. In the original mythology, Arthur is conceived by rape and has an incestuous son with his sister, and Merlin is a sexual predator and the son of the devil. This is not a book that shies away from that darkness or lets it get by unexamined, but that darkness and intensity is balanced by a whole lot of fun. There's cool magic and weird fae and detailed sword fighting. Grossman has been working on this book off and on since 2015, and it totally makes sense to me why. It's a sprawling epic hidden within a classic hero's journey, filled to bursting with ideas, and as could be expected, the whole thing is wrapped in Grossman's typical lyrical prose. Colm, our protagonist, is a young man driven by the stories he has been told of the Knights of the Round Table and the story he tells himself about himself. He's traveling a land that is torn between the stories that are told of the civilized Christian Romans that have come and left and of the stories told of the wildness and fae that exist outside and through the land. When the audience meets the survivors of Camlan, we see that everybody is struggling with those same tensions as they figure out what their story is, and the interludes in which those stories are told are lovely and well-timed. This is a book set around the edges of the King Arthur mythology, mostly focusing on the outsiders of Camelot, and mostly taking place after Arthur's death. It's a book that asks, what made them like that? And then what happened? Of the classic myths, and gives us some nuanced answers to those questions. What would it have been like to be queer or to be clinically depressed or to reject the gender roles thrust upon you? What would it have been like to wrestle with a culture of chivalry in a land that had been conquered in a brutal manner by the same people that had brought that supposed civilization, to be Christian in a land where the old pagan ways still very much existed? How can you deal with the sins of your fathers and feel the approval of the Father? The modern mythology of King Arthur is an amalgam of a rose-tinted view of historic heraldry and of ideas of what it is to be British. But if Arthur existed at all, he lived in British Isles that were suffering so much from the departure of the Romans that they wouldn't even be able to mint their own coins for centuries, let alone make glorious suits of armor for their knights. It would have been a world of crumbling Roman ruins, filled with the echoes of a slaughtered pagan past and a very religious form of Christianity. The myths were first written at a time when knights and chivalry were a thing, so of course they imagined a noble history for their ways. In the last century, writers seem to have leaned into the anachronism and magic, or cut it out entirely. Cuts a middle path, with magic and knights in suits of armor, but also sub-Roman regional politics and pre-Anglo-Saxon languages. Yes, Palamedes the Saracen should have lived several hundred years later once Islam had actually gotten a following, but by including him Grossman gets to make references to the Golden Age of Baghdad. This book ends up serving, I think, as a really excellent complement to the original mythology. It examines and deconstructs it without losing track of what makes it so enduring. In that way, Grossman has his cake and eats it too, critiquing the idea of a knight's tale while also giving us a hugely fun example of exactly that.
Next up is A Sweet Sting of Salt. Here's what Caitlin Herrera had to say. Her comment got 136 likes. A Sweet Sting of Salt is a retelling of The Selkie Wife. Jean Langille is the main character and the village midwife. She lives on a more secluded rocky outcrop of the island, away from prying eyes and wagging mouths belonging to the voracious gossip mill in town, and that's just how she likes it. She has accepted her lot as the town pariah because of social disgrace directly linked to the unfortunate detection of the true nature of her friendship with Josephine Ketty, her childhood best friend and first. She is content with the peaceful, purposeful life she has cut out for herself until one tempestuous night, a scream slices through the howling wind and roaring waves of a wrathful sea. Jean is summoned into the storm to investigate, discovering a strange, ethereal woman locked in the throes of childbirth, seemingly from the sea herself. By morning, Jean has safely delivered a new baby and logically concluded this dark and mysterious woman, who only speaks a growling, wild-sounding language, must be the new wife of Tobias Silber, a sailor who lives sort of close by. Jean sets off to fetch Tobias to demand why his wife, Murin, would be in such a way in the middle of the night and why he hadn't bothered to bring her earlier to be evaluated. Once back at Jean's cabin with Tobias in tow, she immediately starts to pick up on an unnerving energy between husband and wife. The woman is noticeably silent and reserved in her husband's presence, and her haunted eyes communicate to Jean what her words cannot. There is a monstrous truth prowling just below the surface of normality. Ostensibly, Jean inserts herself into their lives as a concerned neighbor and experienced midwife to monitor and manage Murin's condition and the baby's progress, But she's really trying to sniff out the secrets Tobias is so clearly trying to keep. Despite an initial language barrier, Jean starts to fall for Murin the more time she gets to spend with her. She once again finds herself in a situation where all she loves most dearly could be painfully sliced from her grasp, but this time Jean is steeled for the impending battle to salvage her friendship, her home, and their freedom. I really did not know what I was getting myself into when I started this book. I was delighted to find a reimagining of Celtic folklore, salted with queer love stories and historical pearls to find along the way. There were moments in the book where I was honestly mad at Jean for risking it all to steal a few desperate moments with Murin. The suspense in these moments had me sitting on pins and needles, knowing fatal discovery and disaster were potentially just seconds away. This book is propulsive and horrifying in equal measure, but I love that the women in this story are tenacious, resourceful, and determined to thwart the patriarchy by any means necessary. This tale has lessons that echo into the present day. With women's rights regressing in the most recent years, these valuable lessons are needed more than ever. Men who hide behind patriarchal social constructs and refuse accountability in the continued oppression and transgression against their female counterparts, beware the women who dare to want more than what's assigned and challenge what they're told. There will come a time where they just might dare to take back what has been wrongfully purloined. Powerful and unanticipated thoughts to be left with from this book. I very much recommend this book to anyone in the mood for historical fiction. Since this book has a touch of the supernatural and surprising contemporary relevance, be prepared to ruminate on this story for a while. Thank you so much to NetGalley and Random House Publishing Group Valentine for the ARC and the opportunity to share what I think. All opinions are my own. Publication date was in April.
Time for Voyage of the Damned. Let's see why Jules Arbeau's comment, with 328 likes, stood out. If you ever thought, wow, what if Fruits Basket were gay and took place on a boat, and there was so much murder? Then this is the book for you. It's also for you if you never thought that. Hui Diren Kobita Dykes. I got to read an early version of this book, by making sad hopeful eyes, at its incredibly talented author, and y'all are not ready. While reading. The places this book takes you, the characters are instantly lovable and so real. Ganymedes Pescaro, aka D, is my favorite sort of disaster child, and every one of the 12 heirs feels so real, I could swear I've met them personally. The murder mystery aspect kept me literally screaming and guessing right up until the Wilde reveal, and the humor and breathtaking intensity and wrenching emotion are so well balanced. Be ready to feel the full spectrum of emotions, and then some. It's amazing. Can't recommend this one highly enough. By turns visceral and vibrant. Blends joyful and page-turning freshness with evocative and deeply emotional intensity. Strap yourself in for the voyage of a lifetime. You're going on a murder cruise. Asterisk straps you in personally. Norkin, Pers Naitaju Bellowed. Krafin 9-time Wondais. Krafin Pers Naitime sometime, I'm literally begging you.
Now let's move on to When Among Crows. Let's see what Emma, whose comment received 318 likes, had to say. I could give a lot of reasons I wanted to read this, but the top one was always going to be, look at that gold detailing on the cover. Unfortunately it turns out it's orange, and that this book is not really for me. I love short books, but that's because I typically read literary fiction, and books about the ennui in the life of a woman in her 30s don't normally need extra pages to clear up any confusion. This, about polished magic in Chicago featuring a romance, a movie theater showing Alien as a cover, climactic, action-packed sequences like a guy trying to pick a flower, and musical mythical creatures, probably could have used some. But it wasn't a bad time. Bottom line, I don't really know what happened in this book, but
Our next book is A Natalie, whose comment was liked by 1780 readers, had this to say. The beauty of Was the Found Family. Did live up to its predecessor? Not quite. But I still enjoyed revisiting everyone at Marcia's. Linus and Arthur were properly together in the sequel, which was wonderful. I loved when they were allowed to have their domestic scenes. The children were adorable and up to their usual shenanigans, although they also seemed more grown and serious, and I didn't always quite know what to make of that. Especially when Sal was lecturing. CH14 was good. And that's it? That's all the positive things I've to say. The book fell short for me. But why? There were times when the dialogue became very monologue-ish and somewhat preachy. It was like getting a sermon every other chapter. It almost felt as if TJ Klune was trying to convince of the plight of magical creatures. He needn't have bothered, I was already on their side. How many times can you shove the same message down someone's throat in 400 pages? As far as I can remember, book number 1 was better than this one. I could be misremembering, of course, it has been a while. That doesn't change the fact that I was never allowed to draw my own conclusions with this book. I was simply told who was right and who was wrong. The book didn't invite for deeper reflection. It almost seemed as if I wasn't trusted to reach the correct conclusion on my own. And while I agree with the message, did it have to be so on the nose and frequent? This book and the previous one are both labeled YA plus adult. I'd thought book number 1 was whimsical with its unique language, but this book cranked it up a notch or two. To a point where I think we entered exclusive YA territory and I didn't necessarily appreciate the shift. Seemed better balanced. In the end, I'm left with one question. Unfortunately, I don't think so. Book number 1 stood wonderfully on its own, and whilst the book had somewhat of an open-ended resolution, I don't think was the answer to that. I don't even think it needed answered. Not everything needs to be tied up with a neat little bow. In a sense, this book was a repeat of. Again, we have an evil government who sends a worker to asses the island. Again, we have the government official conducting interviews and observing. Again, we get the same message to be kind and tolerant. The only difference is that Miss Marblemore doesn't become better. She doesn't change her mind, unlike Linus. The book reads more as a, what if Linus had been bad? Then there's Router, who was a cartoon villain. TJ Klune tried to give her depth right at the finish line, but it felt cheap. Did she really need a sad backstory for being evil? Sometimes people just suck. I think this could have been a better book if it had simply been about David coming to Marcia's and finding a home and a family. If I'm being completely honest, I thought the dedication to the trans community would have more relevance to the plot, given that it was. Maybe I was thinking too ahead and making up assumptions, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that I thought David would be trans. I thought the plot would have more to do with Marcia's being the first place David felt comfortable being open about his true self. And while the book did dedicate some time to this aspect in terms of David being a monster, I found it a little hollow. I also think this would have been better if the politics had been a B-plot. It also shouldn't have been stretched out as far as it was. Would have loved diving deeper into Arthur's childhood and learn more about his parents, or hearing more about those missing years where he helped hide people in the magical community. The sequel didn't have the same magic of the first one. Also, I didn't like the ending. It was too perfect and convenient, almost unearned and forced. Per definition, we had a seemingly unsolvable problem that was suddenly resolved by an unexpected and unlikely intervention, with a last-minute power-up and revelation from Zoe.
Alright, let's check out the warm hands of ghosts. Here's what Niloufer Ozmekik said. Her comment got 652 likes. I am absolutely over the moon after receiving an advanced copy of this book. As a devoted fan of The Bear and the Nightingale trilogy, my excitement knows no bounds. I celebrated by dancing on the rooftops and proclaiming my love for this series to anyone who would listen. My expectations for this book were astronomical. And rightfully so. Having been completely captivated by the author's previous works, I knew that she had the power to craft mind-blowing worlds and take readers on unforgettable journeys. Her ability to immerse readers in intricately detailed and breathtaking settings has always left me in awe. This book, however, took my breath away in a different way. It is a shocking, dark, and profoundly heartbreaking tale. It is a tragic yet painfully realistic symphony that explores the devastating consequences of war, dragging people into a bleak world that lies somewhere between the realm of the living and the world of ghosts. As you read, you can almost feel the cold shiver of the lingering ghosts, their ethereal presence haunting your every step. You touch their spectral hands and are reminded that they are long gone, leaving nothing but echoes in their wake. Katherine Arden masterfully transports us to the darkest and most harrowing corners of the battlefield. We find ourselves alongside soldiers trapped in cramped spaces, struggling to breathe as they are surrounded by the lifeless bodies of their comrades. Through her vivid prose, we navigate the darkness with them, making our way to the makeshift sanatoriums where wounded soldiers, plagued by gangrenous limbs and excruciating pain, cling to their last moments of life. The nurses who tend to them offer comfort and solace, writing heartfelt letters to their families in the midst of the chaos. The narrative kicks off in January 1918, introducing us to Laura Ivan, a former field nurse who returns home to Canada, to the city of Halifax. During the tumultuous times of the war, she witnesses the brutal death of her mother and loses her father in a devastating explosion. Laura finds herself seeking refuge in an eccentric household inhabited by three sisters who claim to communicate with spirits through seances. They make a living by taking money from gullible individuals seeking solace. Laura reluctantly participates in their seances, all while harboring doubts about the authenticity of their spiritual connections. During one of these seances, she receives a startling message from the spirits. Her brother Freddie, presumed dead in the war, is alive. Alongside this mysterious revelation, she receives an enigmatic note promising to reunite her with her brother. But the message becomes indecipherable toward the end. Determined to uncover the truth, Laura decides to enlist the help of Mary Burton, a close friend of Ms. Shaw, who can facilitate Laura's employment in a Belgian nursery. This job opportunity may lead her to the Forbidden Zone, where she hopes to investigate her brother's disappearance. Pym Shaw, another grieving mother haunted by the loss of her son, agrees to accompany Laura on this journey to find closure. Their arduous journey introduces them to a peculiar hotel where they encounter a mysterious violinist who shares his wine and a magical mirror capable of revealing one's deepest desires. The question arises, could this enigmatic figure be the fiddler, the elusive and sinister character mentioned in the stories of soldiers who claim to have encountered him just before descending into madness? The narrative also takes us back in time to November 1917. Following Freddie Ivan, Laura's brother, who finds himself trapped in an overturned pillbox with a German soldier named Hans Winter. As they struggle for survival in the pitch-black darkness, they manage to find a way out. Freddie chooses to take Winter as his prisoner but makes a solemn promise to protect him. Their bond deepens in the face of impending doom, transcending the boundaries of war. As the story unfolds, the world around the siblings deteriorates into apocalyptic chaos. Desperation, starvation, violence, and deprivation become the grim reality. The characters face the looming threat of losing all hope, their memories slipping away as they become mere husks of their former selves. Consumed by rage and madness, this book is a masterpiece that not only blew my mind but also shattered my heart and shook me to my core. It stands as one of the most powerful, poignant, and achingly real war stories I have ever had the privilege of reading. The author's portrayal of individuals fighting for survival while losing pieces of their hope and sanity is hauntingly authentic. In conclusion, this book not only met my already high expectations but exceeded them in every way. I proudly and wholeheartedly award it a blazing 5 stars. And without a doubt, I declare this reading experience as one of the absolute best books of 2024. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to NetGalley and Random House Publishing Group, Ballantine, Del Rey, for generously providing me with a digital reviewer copy in exchange for my honest thoughts. This literary journey will forever hold a special place in my heart.
Next up is The Night Ends with Fire. Here's what Yoon had to say. Her comment got 400 likes. A magnificent retelling, isn't the Mulan legend of your Disney youth, that's for sure. Mylin has grown up under the thumb of her oppressive father all her life. Soon he plans to sell her for her dowry to another violent man who will treat her the same. When war comes to the Three Kingdoms, Mylin seizes her chance and enlists in the army as a man. But as she gains skills and confidence and the power of a spirit, she begins to wonder if her duplicity will hold and how far she's really willing to go to secure her freedom. Let me just gush for a second here. I had such an amazing time with this story. It's exactly the sort I adore, with a badass heroine and a high-stakes conflict where everything is on the line. There is no easy victory, only hard choices, and every character is some shade of morally grey. I feel like Disney's was a bit too goody two-shoes, as is typical of Disney. So I'm really glad this book turned that on its head. Mylin certainly isn't good through and through. Instead, she must balance her desire for freedom and power with her duty to her kingdom and her love for her family. There was a rawness and courage to Mylin that makes it easy to like her and relate to her, even if I didn't always understand or agree with her decisions. In fact, it's not just Mylin's character that's interesting and complex. It's almost every character in this book. Their moral ambiguity is a large part of why they come across as real and interesting. There is no straightforward path when it comes to war, no high road to take on the way to victory. There is only bloodshed and sacrifice and death, and this tale certainly doesn't shy away from that. The writing in here is evocative and easy to fall into. I feel like I was sucked in from the very first page. To me, there is no higher compliment and no greater quality in a book than immersiveness, and this story has it in spades. I wanted to gobble it up but also savor it slowly so that I didn't reach the end too soon. This is categorized as romantasy, and I would say it's mostly fantasy with just a bit of romance sprinkled in, exactly how I like it. The fantasy world is vivid and easy to grasp without a lot of complex world building. And the light romance should appeal to readers who aren't big fans of it or don't care for lots of explicit scenes. One interesting thing to note are the names in here. When you translate names between different languages, you have the choice of going phonetically or contextually. Phonetically is generally considered more authentic, but you lose the meaning behind the names. Here, the author chose to do a mix of both. While at first it was a little odd to have names in Pinyin like Mylin next to Sky and Sparrow, I did grow to appreciate that it gave context where otherwise there would be none and helped to distinguish the characters for an English-speaking audience. Same could also be said for including some Chinese phrases mixed in an English book. When the meaning is unclear, the author often put the Pinyin and the English side by side, so that really the phrase is duplicated. I can see the purists getting up in arms over it, claiming that it's sufficient just to include the Pinyin and leave it at that. So what if the audience it's intended for doesn't understand? But that's just silly. While I'm all for authenticity, I'm happy with the balance the author struck so that no one has to miss out. What an exhilarating tale this turned out to be. I originally picked it up because the luminous cover and pretty sprayed edges totally captured my attention, and I wasn't about to pass up a Mulan retelling. While judging a book by its cover doesn't always pay off, it certainly did in this case. My only regret is reaching the end and realizing this isn't a standalone. Now starts the long wait for the sequel. Tilde 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 tilde.
Moving on to A Song to Drown Rivers. Clace shared her thoughts, and 570 people liked what she had to say. Everyone has been raving about Anne Liang's YA rom-coms, so I had to see what the hype was about, and I had gotten an arc of her new adult fantasy book on NetGalley. So I thought, why not really this first, and to say I'm disappointed would be an understatement because this book was so lacking in almost every aspect. It could have done so much better, but it failed to read that potential. It was also very short. My arc was about 280 pages with 15 pages being additional stuff. I did enjoy it and that's why I'm giving it 2 stars. The writing was the better part and I had enjoyed reading it during the second half where I quite literally flew through it, but I could not negate the wasted potential. It could have been such a beautiful tragic novel, if it was done, and this unfortunately was not done right. The fantasy elements were missing from this novel, they were so minute and not well explored. For a romantasy, the romance felt missing too. The world building was lackluster and the action was barely there. The political, court intrigue could have been more drawn out, more explored, but that wasn't the case here either. The book fluctuated a lot. Sometimes it would be so slow and the other times it would be extremely fast, and it was very off-putting. The way it was written may be fun and enjoyable, but it lacks so many things that would make it actually good. The characters were so mid and wasted, loudly crying. Our love interest was present only for 25% of the book, so we barely barely got any content from his side or any development from his side both romantically and for his character. Zhengdan and Fuchai's characters were wasted. I won't say why Zhengdan's was, but Fuchai's character, he deserved so much better. And his character could have been more flawed and more morally grey, but he quite literally was a drunken fool loudly crying shishi. Our main character managed to do the bare minimum, seduce a drunken fool, smiling face, clapping hands, light skin tone, that's it. That's what the 13 weeks worth of training taught her. The character development was simply non-existent. They were just there and they moved around and the story finished. The ending was very disappointing as well. I couldn't feel anything because I wasn't that attached to the character, but I was shocked by it and not really impressed. Tbh. Zixu was the only character who ate loudly crying, that one line where he says at the end loudly crying cooking knife, he devoured loudly crying. The romance was so disappointing. It was so rushed because the FMC and the MMC catch feeling like 20% in and then 5% later the FMC leaves and then they meet twice during this whole fiasco, and those moments were also brief. We got more of her scenes with Fuchais than the fanlie, and it was so disappointing because when a book does not deliver on fantasy you expect the romance to overshadow it, and this failed as well. The quotes were nice but the romance simply was not. Also that one scene where she says fanless name loudly crying, the second-hand embarrassment loudly crying clown face. Also for an adult book there was nothing adult of sort, it read like a YA novel. Overall, a subpar novel which could have exploited more of its potential pensive face. This book is one of my most highly anticipated books and it's also so I am so excited to read this. Got the arc back in Feb and I feel like this is the perfect time to read this. Less than 333.
Moving on to A Sorceress Comes to Call. Esta shared her thoughts, and 469 people liked what she had to say. The Brothers Grimm's original tales are already pretty gnarly, so I'm always skeptical when publishers hype their retellings as dark. Cinderella's stepsisters have their eyes pecked out by birds. Snow White's evil stepmother is sentenced to dance in red-hot iron shoes and then she drops dead. Let's also not forget the charming lesser-known Juniper Tree, featuring infanticide, gaslighting someone into thinking they committed said infant killing, followed by a hearty meal of the child's bones. Not exactly Disney material, so naturally, I wondered if this dark retelling of Cut Out Dark, which already features horse decapitation and macabre justice. Turns out, yes. Not scary dark, but more creepy dark, punctuated with macabre, murdery and straight-out unhinged moments. Plus extreme trigger and content warnings for coercive control and abusive family dynamics, violence, death, and a good sprinkle of subtle, dry, Regency-era black humor and satire. So yeah, that type of dark. In hindsight, it's quite a lax retelling, with a lot of new characters and trajectories. However, Kingfisher retains the symbolism of the original with the roles of the princess, the maid, and the goose tender, with a twist. Plus, there is still a horse, named Falada, and plenty of fancy geese, and they're pretty nifty. And you can bet that Kingfisher has taken some of the original Grimm elements and cranked it up to a level. You'll have to read it to find out what I mean, and it's completely cooked, but in a good way. Moreover, we're aware of the villain right from the start, an interesting artistic choice. She's pretty atrocious, and a little extra backstory for our evil sorceress might have nudged this review into 5-star territory. To be fair, we do get some glimpses into her motivations, but with a wicked witch this formidable, a few more layers would have made her feel more nuanced. Minor quibble aside, amidst a sea of tired fairy tale retellings, this one stands out as pretty unconventional and inventive. With refreshingly real characters, like Hester, a no-nonsense 51-year-old reluctant heroine with a bad knee, it masterfully balances eerie and unsettling elements with satire and comic relief, hallmarks of Kingfisher's distinctive style. If you're open to experimenting with something a bit unusual, give this book a try. I thoroughly enjoyed it and now need to read more Kingfisher, stat. Highly recommended. My heartfelt thanks to NetGalley and Titan Books for the arc in exchange for an honest review. This is billed as a dark retelling of, but let's be real, the original German fairy tale captured by the Brothers Grimm is already pretty macabre. Kingfisher, let's see what you got.
My heartfelt thanks to NetGalley and Titan Books for the ARC in exchange for an honest review.
Here comes an Academy for Liars, and guess what? Esther's hot take scored 456 likes. Let's read it. Look, I'll come clean, I still haven't cracked open Donna Tartt's or ML Rio's. I know, I'm a dark academia heretic. My experience has mainly been Hogwarts, Naomi Novik's, and Leigh Bardugo's paranormal version of Yale University, which are my benchmark. So, take that as you will. But let me tell you, Drayton College in Alexis Henderson's is in a unique league of its own, and I'm here for it. Meet Lennon Carter, our protagonist, who isn't exactly getting a magical school acceptance letter by Owl. No, she's busy catching her fiancé red-handed with her closest friend at her own engagement party. Ouch. So, what's a girl to do? Naturally, she steals his car, consults a mysterious stranger in a phone booth, and makes a beeline for a secret magic school that teaches cool mind powers. What fun! With a premise like that, you'd expect to have me hooked from page 1. But for the first 40%, I was all set to slap on a 3-star rating. Maybe it was a me issue. Patience isn't exactly my superpower. While the world building was atmospheric, the initial pace was also a bit slow for my tastes. Furthermore, when I caught wind of the student-teacher relationship trope, I braced myself for disappointment, personally not really into it. Then, around the 50% mark, things started to pick up speed. And then, bam! The story took my expectations, crumpled them up, and yeeted them out the window. What followed was a wild ride of twists, turns, violence, morals, power struggles, and an emotional whirlwind that completely flipped the script, and I couldn't stop compulsively turning the pages. I loved it. So yeah, I might be stating the obvious, but don't waltz in expecting cute elves with mismatched socks in this one. Brace yourself for adult themes, highly questionable ethics, intense horror elements, and a splash of sci-fi. There are moments that practically scream, but I'll keep which book title under wraps to avoid spoilers. Just know that when the horror kicks in, it's a wild ride. Think lots of blood, gore, injuries, seizures, murder, coercion, violence, and a smorgasbord of other trigger warnings. Speaking of trigger warnings, animal lovers, take note. The big one for me was the questionable animal ethics. No deaths, but think testing on animals. Rest assured, Lennon, our FMC, also questions the school's ethics, and I was pleased with how things turned out. Had any animals met a senseless tragic end, my rating would have plummeted. Still, proceed with caution. So yes, this book crawled, walked, ran, and ultimately soared for me. If you're the type who demands plot fireworks from page 1, this might not be your cup of tea. It took a while to warm up to, but the payoff was worth it. This is undoubtedly one of the most memorable dark academia reads I've encountered this year, and comes with my high recommendation for School of Magic enthusiasts who don't mind their story punctuated with blood, gore, and unsettling horror elements. And that student-teacher trope. Did I like it in the end? Just look at my rating. My heartfelt thanks to Random House UK, Transworld Publishers, Bantam for the e-arc in exchange for an honest review. Small diamond, small diamond, small diamond.
The Lost Story is next, and Esther's take got a lot of love. 310 likes to be exact. Curious. Let's hear it. Whether it was chasing a talking rabbit down a rabbit hole into Wonderland, landing in Munchkinland and following a yellow brick road to the Emerald City, opening a wardrobe to step into Narnia with its talking lions and fawns, climbing up the faraway tree to ever-changing magical lands above the clouds, or being whisked away by a flying boy to Neverland with mermaids and eternal youth, I was always hooked by magic portal fantasy stories. I think also what really got me was the leap from the mundane to the fantastical. And it turns out I still apparently have a soft spot for these types of tales, judging by how much I enjoyed this book. It feels both familiar and refreshingly new, with found family, rainbow flag romance, Leisha love story, anti-farce, what seems like a possibly neurodivergent female main character, at least in my interpretation, based on her quirks and traits, though it's not explicitly stated. Plus, it's sprinkled with enough Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks references to make any fan swoon. Disclaimer, don't hate me, but they're not to my taste. But others might appreciate the references in this book more than I did. Anyway, the story unfolds in a third-person narrative, alternating between the perspectives of FMC Emily and once estranged high school besties, MMC's Rafe and Jeremy. Together with Emily's antisocial pet fancy rat, Fritz, they form a motley crew, on a quest for answers about Emily's vanished sister, and Rafe's missing memories, of that time he disappeared for 6 months in a forest with Jeremy, which, funnily enough, happens to be in the same place that Emily's sister went missing. To be honest, the first 40% of this book felt like a bit of a slog. It was all foundational story set up in the mundane real world, and I may have been a bit impatient for the magic to kick in. But no spoilers here. Since it's a portal fantasy, we know the MCs eventually step into another world. That's where things really switched gears for me. I guess pan-dimensional red crows, cyclops owls, silver-skinned mermaids, unicorns and rainbow sand beaches in a kingdom that doesn't take itself too seriously could have that effect. If the above sounds a bit too whimsical, twee, or even like a psychedelic trip mushroom rainbow unicorn butterfly, and you're not into psychedelic trips, then this might not be the book for you. However, it's more than just a feast of vivid colours and cozy whimsy. At its core, it's a tale of found family, deep friendships, enduring love, limitless possibility, healing, forgiveness, and a heartfelt reminder that what's lost can be found. All things considered, this feel-good story left me both satisfied and charmed. Yet, don't be fooled, there is also profound depth and meaning. It's a tale that balances heartwarming moments with serious and relevant themes. Be aware of the trigger warnings. Mention of prenatal substance abuse, domestic and family violence. Mentions of depression, suicide and mental illness. Mention of the death of a parent/chess, as well as an implied homophobic character. Spiders too. This was my first Meg Shaffer/Tiffany Rise experience, but won't be my last. If you were enchanted by Ozo by T.J. Klune, or any other portal fantasy story, there is a decent chance you will be delighted by too. Highly recommended. Scrubbing my brain clean after reading eyeball horrors and teenage slashers with a Narnia-inspired tale. My heartfelt thanks to Quercus Books Arcadia for the ARC in exchange for an honest review.
What did readers really think about the Blackbird Oracle? Chantal's comment, liked by over 704 people, might give us a clue. It's no secret how much I adore this series. The world is a fantastical dream come true for any fantasy lover. From the very first book, we are treated to a well-crafted story that takes us on a magical journey filled with discovery, fear, and powerful love. In this latest installment, things slow down a bit, as Diana embarks on a new journey to explore her dark magic. There's a lot of backstory that comes to light, which can take some getting used to. But let me tell you, the scenes with the twins are absolutely delightful. Their innocence shines through, and it's clear their characters are being set up for important roles in the future. I did miss Matthew a bit. He felt more like a background character this time around. We did get a steamy scene, but I needed him to be more prominent. While I understand that the focus was meant to be on Diana, I wish we could have seen more of the beloved characters we've come to know. The hype around the twins' magical testing was big throughout the book, but when it finally happened, it felt a bit short and flat. Despite that, it's clear this book is setting the stage for something huge, and I can't wait to be part of it. In summary, while this book had its slow moments, it's a must-read for fans of the series. The world-building continues to be enchanting, and the setup for what's to come has me eagerly anticipating the next installment.
What did readers really think about the Tainted Cup? Chai, the library on TikTok, Heart's comment, liked by over 847 people, might give us a clue. You can always count on RJB to write a stunningly original work of fantasy that's precisely and cunningly crafted to leave its reader feeling bereft and abandoned and craving a sequel like an ember craves air. This was good. 10 out of 10. Would read again in a heartbeat. There is so much to sing about here, but what I loved most about this book is how it roots so hard for its neurodivergent protagonists who have to actively and painstakingly manifest worth and recognition in a world that gives them so readily and abundantly to everyone else. This is in many ways a story about being confronted with systems of power that make no allowance for where difference is in fact recorded as suspect, and differently able bodies become the locus of aberrance even as they are exploited, manipulated, and remade for the use, whims, and fantasies of the rich and powerful. It's a story about transgressing, defying, redressing and resisting this dominant order, sometimes at world-destroying costs. You will find so many resonances here with the overlapping crises of our contemporary moment, and it might just make you afraid. If you're a fan of the unique dynamic of Sherlock and Watson, the eccentric flair of Benoit Blanc in 2019, or like your fantasy with more than a dash of murder, mystery, and existential threat, this is for you. Heck, if you're just a fan of, you do not want to miss this book. Read it for yourself, and let it bedazzle your brain.
Now we turn to Five Broken Blades. 3's comment, which received 615 likes, offers an interesting perspective. 5 most dangerous liars in the land, and it's just a bunch of grown PPL being horny for each other instead of focusing on the actual tasks at hand. What happened to approaching romance with actual chemistry and good build-up instead of hitting us over the head with it like a sledgehammer over and over? How are you gonna write Insta love for, basically almost, THRE couples? This book is a money laundering scheme backed by TikTok tropeification. People I'm convinced.
Let's move forward with The Fox Wife. Yun's review attracted 718 likes. Here's what she wrote. Exquisite and mesmerizing, kept me enchanted from the very first moment to the very last. Told through the alternating perspectives of Bao, an aging investigator with a penchant for sniffing out the truth, and Snow, a mysterious lady on a quest to avenge the death of her child, this story sits at the irresistible intersection of historical fiction, mystery, and folklore. Secrets and questions abound in here. Who are these characters? What do they want? And how do their paths cross through so many years and miles of tribulations? Add to that a main character who is not quite human, as well as the singular backdrop of the wintry world of Manchuria during the last years of the Qing dynasty, and the scene is set for a tale unlike any I've come across before. I'm always drawn towards folklore, and the hallmark of a good one is the seamless blending of the real and the fantasy. You don't want to get mired in the weeds of the hows and whys of this slightly altered world, but you also don't want to just be dropped in the middle of what feels like an artificial construct. And this story achieves that balance flawlessly. With so much of the story riding on its animal characters, there's the fear that it can come across contrived or, even worse, silly. But the foxes in here feel so real, as if these creatures really do live in our world, coexisting among us in disguise and leaving havoc but also wonder in their wake. In fact, the portions of the story told from Snow's perspective were the most evocative, and I found her to be vivid and compelling. Snow's quest to avenge her dead child struck something in me. The quiet and reflective prose that Yangsze Choo so deftly wields adds this soft dignity to Snow's plight, and the end result is so emotionally resonant, I felt it deep within my heart. Her grief and anger were so raw and sharp, yet her continued strength in the face of such tragedy makes her the sort of strong female character I love and cheer for. One of the most surprising and delightful additions in here were all the little nuggets of fox wisdom. Of course, if the world were seen through the eyes of an animal, their life experiences and their way of thinking would be different from ours, resulting in unique insights. And these little morsels were dispensed at the most pertinent times, leaving me nodding and chuckling along at their undeniable wisdom and humor. When I finish a book, there are 2 distinct feelings I can have. Either I'm happy to be done and excited to move on to something else, or I feel a sense of melancholy that I've reached the end of a magical journey and there's no more. And this book falls squarely in the latter. I could have easily gobbled up another 400 pages of this and it still wouldn't have been enough. What an epic and memorable tale Yangsze Choo has crafted. The story itself often speaks of foxes beguiling humans into falling in love with them, yet I can't help but feel as if it were the story that has cast a spell on me, and I were the one who was beguiled all along. Tilde.
Time for Empire of the Damned. Let's see why Mike's book reviews' comment, with 375 likes, stood out. Watch my full video review here. Many thanks to J. Kristoff for ensuring I got an early ARC to read. You rock, amigo. As we return to Day's death, Kristoff thankfully gives us a recap of Book 1, in the form of a historian, telling you briefly of the fate for each character in Empire of the Vampire 3 years ago. But I think he does a great job through character dialogue, both internal and external, of reminding you of the big moments. There is no sophomore slump here as we jump right back in with Gabe and Dior, and holy hell does that relationship just get better and better. The way they talk to each other is just so much bloody fun, I almost can't stop laughing. It's well played and you truly believe they care for one another. The biggest improvement, with more page time this go around, is that of the Liang. This is a character I never would have expected to want so much more of, but Kristoff did a great job with character development, and you're going to feel some sort of way about her by the end. The best new character in the book for me was Phoebe. At first I wasn't really sure what her deal was, but by the end of the book she's right there with the 2 leads as my favorite in the series, and I just couldn't get enough of her. The addition of Lachlan was really good too. This is a stellar follow-up to Book 1, which I did like a bit more due to the painful reduction of page time for the Blood Voss. that continues to raise the stakes and set things up for what should be a thrilling conclusion/continuation. I'll still believe he quits with a trilogy when I see it. If you enjoyed book 1, I see zero chance you will not enjoy this one.
Time for the Book of Doors. Let's see why Nilufer Osmekic's comment, with 885 likes, stood out. This book presents a dreamy formula for fantasy readers, complete with time travel, an epic battle between good and evil, and the tantalizing idea that the source of superpowers is intertwined with books. In this captivating narrative, seizing the most powerful books bestows wealth, invincibility, and unrivaled supremacy upon the possessor. As readers, we've always known that books are the most precious treasures in the world, and this riveting, action-packed, and magical adventure featuring the Midnight Library and time travel delivers a story that firmly underscores this belief. The characters are vividly portrayed, and the magical system built around books is executed with intelligence, granting different powers to individuals based on their unique identities and characteristics. The significance of good books which can transport you anywhere in the world, unlocking doors to limitless possibilities, is beautifully articulated. The Book of Doors becomes Cassie's key to turning her dreams into reality. The story centers around Cassie, an introverted, orphaned, quirky young woman who finds solace working in a bookshop, preferring the enchantment of fantasy over the harshness of reality. Her polar opposite is her best friend and roommate, Izzy, an extroverted, energetic and blunt young woman who, despite coming to New York to pursue a career in Broadway, eventually abandons her dreams due to lack of talent. With Cassie working night shifts and Izzy embracing the daylight, their paths barely cross. However, when they encounter each other at home, they share the mundane events of their days. Cassie confides in Izzy about losing her favorite customer, who left her a mysterious book, covered in symbols created with special ink, known as the Book of Doors. Cassie discovers that when she visualizes a place and opens a door, her vision transforms into reality, allowing her to transport to that place. Cassie decides to use this extraordinary gift to explore different corners of the world. Izzy, though, has reservations, and she's not wrong because the book's power is so immense that it can open doors to any place in the universe. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could alter the course of humanity. Cassie's life takes a perilous turn when she meets Drummond Fox, a mysterious and enigmatic Scottish man in his 40s, who inherited the Fox Library from his grandfather Edmund. He warns her of the imminent danger she faces, explaining that there are numerous books in the world, each bestowing unique powers on its possessor. There's also a malevolent woman relentlessly pursuing Drummond, and she desires to possess all the books for nefarious purposes. Despite her initial skepticism, Cassie soon realizes that she is in grave danger. To protect her life, as well as Izzy's, she must join forces with Drummond to unravel the mystery of these powerful books, all while safeguarding the Book of Doors. When she becomes trapped in an unimaginable place, Cassie must find a way to secure her freedom and protect her future. This is one of the most intelligent, heart-pounding and enchanting books I've had the pleasure of reading in recent times. It resonates with both your intellect and your emotions. The author's imaginative storytelling whisks you away to diverse places and introduces you to intriguing, well-developed characters. You won't want to put this book down. It's the kind of story that makes you wish you could skip work and all other responsibilities, allowing you to immerse yourself in its mesmerizing words and magical universe. I'm eagerly looking forward to reading more works by this author, and I wholeheartedly award this book a well-deserved 5 stars. Many thanks to NetGalley and William Morrow for sharing a digital review copy of this incredible book with me in exchange for my honest thoughts. Special appreciation to Gareth Brown for crafting this remarkable journey.
Time for Emily Wilde's map of the Otherlands. Let's see why Rosh catching up slowly S comment, with 343 likes, stood out. A worthy sequel in the Emily Wilde series. Retains most of the feels. Enjoyed it almost as much as Book 1. Good for cozy fantasy readers. Can't be read as a standalone. The series doesn't end here. This review contains minor spoilers from. Smiling face. This book works excellently as a sequel.
It continues from the end of the first book and offers hints, wherever needed, of what happened earlier. There's no wastage of time with extensive character build-up or plot recaps. It also doesn't rush things to an end but brings the current arc to a proper close, while setting up the foundation for what's next in store. I love it when sequels don't just rehash events from the earlier book, but take the plot as well as the characters ahead. Smiling Face Emily begins the same as before, an obstinate organizer who finds it tough to let go of her sterner side even in relaxed moments. It is a treat to see her let go of her grim facade and give in to her emotions as the story progresses. Wendell is as amazing as in the first book, probably even better. We get to see a lot more of his Phi side in this sequel, and what a delight it is. Smiling Face, the banter between Emily and Wendell is as strong as ever. Their repartee offered the perfect light relief in the first book, and the same continues in this book as well. I love their individual character development, but as a pair, they truly shine. Smiling Face, I remember asking for more romance in my review for the first book. The sequel satisfied me by upping the couple connect but not letting the romance overrule the core storyline. You might be disappointed if you were looking for more spicy stuff, but as we hear the story only through Emily's journal, she obviously keeps things clean, which is perfectly fine by me. Smiling Face, there are a couple of new major characters in this sequel, of whom Emily's young niece Ariadne leaves the strongest mark. Her bubbly and youthful enthusiasm offers the perfect counterfoil to curmudgeonly Emily. Smiling Face, the first book showed the presence of several magical creatures, but those were nothing in comparison to the beings of this sequel. The magic becomes much darker, and the creatures also get more dangerous, but I'm not complaining. Shadow's name deserves a mention in this comment because he is the best of them all. Deadpan Face, the initial 25 to 30% doesn't feel like journal entries. The language is too descriptive, and every conversation is in detailed direct speech, both of which make it appear like a typical first-person narration than like journal writing. It is only afterwards that the content feels more journal-like in its tone. Deadpan Face, the book begins at a great pace and maintains this until about 40% or so. Then the going becomes somewhat tedious. The final 25 to 30% gets the speedometer back up. So you need to have much patience in between, because not much happens and what little happens, happens slowly. Unamused, the human characters other than Emily and Ariadne don't have much to do. Emily's fellow Professor Ferris Rose has a stronger role, but not as developed as it could have been. The Austrian villagers are barely present, unlike in the first book where we had many memorable locals. I'd have loved for more local interactions to vary the monotonous plotline in between. Unamused Emily has a tendency to add extended footnotes to her journal entries. This is much better than her modus operandi in the first book, where she diverged into lengthy appendices containing fairy stories. But the footnotes are still distracting, and mostly unused in the plot. After a point, I just stopped reading them, and don't feel like I missed out on anything essential. All in all, I had high expectations from this book after enjoying the first book to a great extent. Despite the somewhat sluggish pace in between, the sequel managed to keep me mostly happy. I can't wait to see what awaits Emily and Wendell in the third book of this series. Fingers crossed that it will be the final one. Strongly recommended to those who have read and loved the first book of this series. If you are a cozy fantasy with quirky characters fan, make sure you read both books. 4 stars. My thanks to Little, Brown Book Group UK, Orbit, and NetGalley for the DRC of Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. This review is voluntary and contains my honest opinion about the book. Tilde 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 tilde. After a long time, my schedule allowed me to commit to a buddy read with my friend Shrivali. As we had read the first book together, we had to read this one too. Do you think our opinions matched? Check out her review. Shri, looking forward to book 3 with you. Smiley face. tilde 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 tilde. Connect with me through.
The familiar stirred some reactions. Leigh Bardugo's comment, which got 5,874 likes, might just explain why. I've never done this before, but I see that it is permitted, so 5 stars for me. This is an all-new novel. It's historical fantasy set in late 16th century Madrid. It is adult, a standalone, and inspired by my own family history. Most of my books get written in the daylight hours, but this one only worked at night, and I have to wonder if that's when the ghosts felt most comfortable dropping by to read over my shoulder. Arcs and giveaways to come. See you in April, Black Heart.